Hello everybody, welcome to LEGO Rewind, where we take another look at old retired LEGO themes. I get a lot of requests, and one of the most frequent is castle, like the castle theme, as if there's only one. Then I look back and realize there are too many of them to cover in this format, but I can focus on a couple of the ones that stood out to me, like today's theme. It isn't castle per se, but it fits in that vein. Vikings was originally a one-off theme with only 5 intended sets, essentially filler to tide people over between bigger, more mainstream releases. But now and then, one of these smaller themes leaves an impression by being different, and in that regard, Vikings was a scrappy underdog of this side of LEGO. Drawing influence from Norse mythology, it stood out against the waves of generic European stylings we were accustomed to, proving far more successful than expected and engraving itself in the minds of the time. I really like this logo. It's simple, it's colorful, it's stylish, all things that are hard to get together in one design, even if the use of horns to shape the V is a little cliche. Vikings was the first and last to do a number of things. One of the first to feature more modern elements like those wheels, and one of the last to have structures built almost entirely out of that simulated wood. It was a nexus of sorts, caught in the exact pinprick middle of that transitionary phase between what LEGO was in its dark ages and what it is today. Each Viking set depicted a battle between the Vikings themselves and a fearsome monster, and the smaller ones, well, they are clever builds given the limitations of the pieces, but to call them lifelike might be a stretch. The Fenris wolf, while ugly to some, is a distinct creation of the time you wouldn't see before or later. If LEGO wants to build a wolf inspired by Norse mythology today, they'll do it like this. And I won't lie, if I had to choose between the two right now, I'd go with that one. At least this wolf could pass as just being skeletal or demonic, but if I was shown the wyvern in a different context, I might mistake it for a kite, not a living thing. Most of the bigger monsters are fine. The Nidhogg and Fafnir dragons were a major jump. We'd seen dragons before in other lines, but never anything close to this huge or posable. You may notice they got away with a lot of this through various Bionicle G1 pieces, Borak and Toa limbs and such. These dragons become even more interesting when you realize the Hungarian Horntail from Harry Potter was released that very same year, and it's completely different. It's basically the same as today's dinosaurs, if not worse, because the legs don't move. So I appreciate these more intricate, experimental builds, warts and all. I imagine more than a few kids desperately wanted Fafnir, but couldn't afford the entire fort that came with it, so releasing a smaller version of the same thing much cheaper was nice. Then there's a flagship set. Viking ship challenges the Midgard Serpent. That's a mouthful. This was featured prominently in the marketing, and it does make an epic battle, but it could have been even more epic. Take a look at this prototype. It's literally a bunch of 2001 dinosaur bodies strung together. Something that big might look cool on your floor slithering around the ship, but good luck getting it to stand up. Those joints are not that strong. The ship didn't see nearly as big a change, but the new Midgard Serpent is alright. I do like their attempts at cohesion, designing a specialized head with Arashi shell's grooves on it, so that doesn't clash as much with the bricks. I love digging up old prototypes, seeing what wasn't. Sometimes the changes are minimal, but this is one of the more drastic cases I've seen. A lot of other beasts were scrapped, including a kraken, a bull, and an ogre. All of these would added more scale and mystery to the world, but were traded for more dragons. But I have no doubt we would have seen something closer to these had Vikings been allowed to run longer and become a full-fledged theme. I also think it's kind of funny seeing them use Wanua's mask backwards to make up the Nidhogg's head. The Vikings saw some changes too. Their fortress used to be dark red and was more of a port on the water. The logo was more simple and Lord of the Rings-ish, and the Vikings had beards. The finalized Vikings had beard drawings printed on, but I would have loved to see actual molded beards giving them more grit and presence. It just would have made them seem bigger in a way. But LEGO didn't think kids would find that kind of character relatable, because they'd look old, I guess. So the beards were scrapped to make the Vikings look younger. Too bad. I also love the atmosphere of the theme. It's always foggy and isolating, like there could be anything hiding in the background and you wouldn't know until it's too late. It's a land dominated by beasts who see us humans as pests, something to do away with, and they're very good at that. One of the bleaker worlds LEGO's made, and even more so in the prototypes. Even with all the changes and downgrades, what Vikings ended up being was pretty stellar for 2005, enough that LEGO was compelled to whip up a couple of extra sets the next year. That kind of thing doesn't happen as often as you might think. We've seen our share of lines that ended prematurely on this show, but it's rare to see something extended out of the blue, even if it's just one more wave. There was an armament that made a decent army builder set with a whopping 7 minifigs, a chess set, which still counts I guess, and in my opinion the best set in the line. Viking double catapult versus the armored Orfnir dragon! If ever you could only choose one set from this line, regardless of price, I think this is the one to get. For all intents and purposes, this is the final boss of a game, the climax of a movie, the moment it all goes down in flames. You get a perfectly evenly matched combat in a box scenario scenario, with the double catapult being such a unique build. I haven't seen anything like it since. And the Ofnir dragon itself blows the other side of the water. It's bigger, but also more solid, stable, and just full of character and power. We have loads of dragons nowadays, and most of them are great, but this was definitely the best dragon ever designed at the time, becoming the standard, the template, making all those later ones possible. And I like the use of Fenric's head to create the illusion of a helmet. That's a good way to set him apart from the other dragons. Just the idea of a dragon wearing a suit of armor like a human in a battle is awesome. I wonder if he can even fly with all that weighing him down. Throw in 3 Vikings and you've got a party. And when you add that this is 500 pieces for just $40 at the time, dang. I'm sorry if I've turned this into a glorified commercial. This was LEGO Vikings. This was a thing, and they kind of squandered it. Again, it just makes me wonder how cool Vikings could have become had it not been intended as a one-off theme, had it not been created to fail as one-offs tend to be. Oh well, it was fun while it lasted. I like themes like this because they fly in the face of LEGO's increasingly rigid planning and focus testing. We definitely won't see anything like this for the foreseeable future. Like it or not, Castle just doesn't do that well. The more mainstream version in 2007 didn't sell much, even their attempts to make Nexo Knights more unique only went so far. And that had all the backing in the world compared to Vikings, yet it was still cut short. Even with all the factors it had going against it, Vikings went out fighting. If they ever want to make another castle theme, they should try venturing beyond their comfort zone. Look to other mythologies again to draw inspiration from, as respectfully as they can, of course. Vikings was something we never seen before, and it's not hard to see that being the biggest reason people like it so much. We like different, we like the unusual, we like this. And that's all I have to say about it. If you want to support me, please consider checking out my graphic novel series, Planet Ripple. Next time we're going back to space with the UFOs and insectoids. See you then.
The Vikings are under attack. The enormous power of the monster can capsize the ship, but the brave Vikings make ready for battle. With their monster cannon, join the valiant LEGO Vikings in their fight against the monsters in the fog.